I'd like to introduce a couple of people here, and then I'm going to ask Mayor Jennifer Wood from California City if she would lead us in the pledge, and then we'll get right down to it, okay? So, Mick Gleason, yes. Mick, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Tom
Brady, I did not inflate those footballs. I'm sorry. Mick Gleason, Kern County Supervisor. Nice to be here.
Sheriff?
I'm Sheriff Donnie Youngblood.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, would you come up to the podium and lead us in the pledge, please?
Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Please be seated. I'd like to set up a couple of ground rules to begin with. This is not a debate. It is a time seeking information and answers. I know some of you are very, very critical of what has happened or may happen, and I would appreciate that if you would show courtesy and consideration. I can't imagine any of you not doing that. However, today, some of the calls I've gotten, I think some of you are mighty upset. So if you've got something to say, we really, truly, truly, truly want to hear from you. And I know the sheriff and the supervisor does too. So we're going to start and under this. I would like the sheriff and then the supervisor to speak, and then we're going to open up to public comment. And so if you want answers, write them down. If you have questions on what they're going to say, write them down. I assume you would prefer not to be interrupted, would you, sir, or would you take questions? However you want to do it.
It doesn't matter to me. I get interrupted by my staff every single day, so I'm okay with it.
Okay, we'll probably get through it a whole lot quicker, though, if you make your presentation first and let us respond to it. And Supervisor, is that okay with you?
Perfect.
Very good. Okay, then I introduce Sheriff, and come on in and sit down. There's plenty of room up front here. Thank you, Sheriff.
I'd like to introduce the County Administrative Officer, John Nyland. He snuck in the back, and I didn't want him to be unnoticed while we're here. Okay, as we go back to last year, we had budget cuts last year, and the Ridgecrest Jail was on the chopping block to be cut as one of the items that was to be cut. And Supervisor Gleason actually helped find the money to keep the jail open, $600,000 for the year. Then the price of oil, if you don't know what's happened with the price of oil, it is tanked. And our county budget has literally been a nightmare. We were facing in mid-year a 1% cut that the board gave us, and that's $1.2 million that I had to cut mid-year. So we looked at our staffing and where we could cut and not take officers off the streets. And the Ridgecrest Jail, of course, is one of those places. Buttonwillow Substation, we closed the Buttonwillow Substation and moved deputies into vacant positions that we were going to fill, but now we don't have to, and then moved the rest of those into Delano, and they will respond to the Buttonwillow area on calls for service. We also disbanded the major violator unit. And if you don't know what that is, that's major narcotic cases, marijuana grows, those types of things. We eliminated that. We eliminated the boron substation and moved the deputies to Mojave, where they will work out of Mojave. But just so you know, I think we've resolved that issue today with my staff, and I think that we will be able to keep boron with the two deputies that they currently have. They have a senior and a deputy, but we'll be able to, I think, keep them with two deputies. We also cut the vice unit. There's no vice unit any longer, and we closed the East Bakersfield substation, which is where the Sheriff's Activities League is, and the total cost is $1.189 million. I realize that people in Ridgecrest think that closing the jail should not have been a top priority, but this may be the tip of the iceberg. We may be taking deputies out of patrol, out of substations in next in the coming budget year in July. We're facing that type of catastrophic budget that we're building a new jail in Bakersfield, 800 beds. The staffing for that jail is going to come from the old jail. We had a plan where we've been setting money aside to staff that jail. I brought a plan Tuesday to the board that I believe we can staff it with current staff and not have to minimize the cuts for all departments in the county. And that brings us here tonight. And when Peggy called me, I said certainly I'll come, because I totally understand. I realize that the jail in Ridgecrest is important to you. It's important to me. But in the overall spectrum, there's not a lot of in relationship to the other jails, there's not a lot of bookings in Ridgecrest. It costs $600,000 to book. How many people a year, Brian?
235 for the sheriff's office.
235 people for $600,000. And the deputies in the substation here, when they arrest someone, they can call a Mojave deputy. They can meet them halfway, like we used to do, and book them into the Mojave jail. So this isn't good. Didn't come out here to tell you that I wish that the jail shouldn't be here. But when you prioritize, believe me, we had the same issue with the Buttonwillow constituents Tuesday. The boron people, I'm going to hear from them, and I actually even heard from the board because I cut the major violator unit. So some days it's not fun to be the sheriff. This is the times that it's really not fun to be the sheriff. Mick?
Yeah. Can I speak?
Please.
Okay. Thanks, Donnie. First of all, I want to thank the sheriff for driving all the way up here. I've been a supervisor for 3 years. I've come to respect Donnie. I respect his the sheriff department, the work they do. They do outstanding work, and I'm proud to serve alongside him. So I want to set the context for it so you understand the decision that was made about the jail, or that's about to be made about the jail. So about 2 years ago, the price of a barrel of oil was about $100. January 1st, 2014, it was about $100, and we built our budget on $100 oil. Kern County is the if it was a state, it would be the third largest producer of oil in the country. It produces 10% of the oil used in this country every year. Kern County is an oil county. I didn't know that when I lived over here, that oil was so big in Kern County, but it is. So January 1st, 2014, the price of a barrel of oil is $100. January 1st, 2015, the price of a barrel of oil is $55. So what that means is our assessor looks at all the property values, the Chevrons, the Aras, the Lynn Energies, all the big guns, and assesses their property values based on their production. And the production dropped 40%. So the revenues that came off the sales taxes into the county coffers was reduced by $27 million in 2014. We declared a state of emergency, a financial emergency. John Nylon's here as our CAO. Will help me up and back me up on numbers when I stumble into some numbers. So then we declared an emergency. We put into effect last year some cuts at the end. Our fiscal year goes from July 1st to June 30th. So July 1st, 2014, we put some cuts in the budget so that we could get through the year. Moving forward to January 1st, 2015, the price of a barrel of oil is $55. We move out. We build a budget on $55 oil. We put those cuts in place. And that's where Donnie said, I think at the final year cuts for 2014-15, that he can't pay for the Ridgecrest jail with the cuts with the allocations he was getting from the general fund. So we threw in $600,000 or some number like that, $650,000, to limp the jail along so we could keep it open and continue moving out in that direction, hoping that the price of oil would remain stable, or that our budget was based on the best numbers we could come up with. Moving forward, January 1st, 2016, the price of a barrel of oil is now $35. That's another 40% cut. That's a dramatic hit on top of a dramatic hit. So what the county has done is we run those numbers and we look at a hit to our general fund of $35 million this year. On top of the $27 million we had last year, $35 million this year, not to mention the fire fund, which has taken a hit of $20 million coming up this July 1st. So we have to budget for these drastic reductions. In anticipation of the drastic hits that are coming this July, and they're going to be substantial, the CAO's office came out with a recommendation to all departments, every single one of them, whether you were veteran services, you were planning, you were sheriff, you were fire, whatever it was, to reduce your budgets by 1% as a mid-year reduction. So the sheriff took that 1%, and the way he manages that 1% is decisions he makes to achieve those goals that we set for him. So that's where the Ridgecrest Jail has come in play and the decision was made. But we got to understand that in July, it's not going to get any better across the board for Kern County. All our budgets are, we just anticipated, what was it, John, 2.5%? 2.5% cut for next year. So either we blanket these cuts across fair and equitably distribute them across all departments, or we say this department doesn't have to pay, this department doesn't have to pay, and usually we do that with public safety. Public safety being the sheriff, the fire, the DA, and the public defender. We've done that previous years. We've done that to a point where now 70% of our budget, of our general fund, give or take a percentage or two, is public safety. So the Board of Supervisors made a decision, 5-0 vote, that we were going to fairly and evenly distribute those that anticipated $35 million hit across all departments. And so that's where the decisions are coming in from the sheriff. They're coming in from the fire department. They're coming in from your veteran services. They're coming in from public health. They're coming in from KMC. They're coming from all our departments. It ain't pretty. It's not pretty. And it's not going to get better in the foreseeable future. We're still looking at some cuts that we're going to have to work our way around and use every trick in the book to get through it, but we will get through it. We're going to look at staffing requirements in all departments. I mean, so far we can affect the sheriff's budget, but there are other budgets we can have a more powerful influence in, and we plan on doing that. I just want to share with you that's the general context. That's why Donnie was cornered and put in a position where he had to make a cut. And from my perspective, I didn't appreciate the fact that Ridgecrest Jail came up. We've had a couple conversations about it, and I got a couple questions for him. And can I start?
Please.
Can I ask a question? And these are met with the utmost respect. But I don't understand where the savings came from, Donnie. How shutting the Ridgecrest Jail is going to save the sheriff's department in managing these cuts. Could you answer how these savings are going to occur?
Certainly. It costs us $600,000 a year to staff the Ridgecrest Jail. Those detention deputies will be moved to Bakersfield, where they will staff vacant detention deputy positions. This $600,000 will not have to be paid. We have vacant detention deputies that we're going to fill. Now we won't have to fill 5 of those because these people will fill those positions. That saves us $600,000.
So these people are moving to Lerdo, and the billets they're filling are billets you're going to have to fill somewhere else because you're moving from here to there.
They're detention deputies.
Right.
To make the plan work to staff the new jail, all detention deputy positions will have to be filled. So while we're filling those, we would have to fill these and those. That's an additional $600,000 that I don't have. It was removed from the budget.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I want to make one comment. The other question I was going to have, and I'm sure people will ask this question, is I'd like you to talk about the fairness of distributing your hits across the county and how that's impacting the whole county, and you're not targeting Ridgecrest and you're not targeting Boron, but there's a reason for the. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But one thing I wanted to you said that you said something about 235 arrests for $600,000. the way we look at that is this isn't a numbers game for us. I think this is a quality of life issue. We have a quality of life here that we treasure. We really do. We're blessed, we're lucky, but we work hard and we sacrifice because we don't live other places, and we give up all those amenities, other amenities that other places have, so that we have the amenities that we like and that we want and that we cherish. And that when your deputies are on the street here, they become an integral part of our community. They're not just uniformed guys driving around busting people. They are integral members of our community, and it creates us a climate of what we like. It's the way we like our quality of life when we sacrifice and work hard for it, and we don't want to lose it. And we're just afraid that if that jail goes, that is one rung down the ladder that we may have difficulty climbing back up to get to if we lose that. So whatever we so I'd like you to talk about that.
Well,
Please.
first of all,
Thank you.
The fairness question is a good question, but you have to go back. I used to be the patrol commander in Bakersfield, and I had 80 deputy sheriffs that patrolled Metro Bakersfield. We've taken budget hits for the last 4 years now. There's 49 deputy sheriffs on the streets of Bakersfield for the 24-hour clock. We have a homicide or a stabbing almost every single night in Bakersfield. So I have a responsibility for the deputy on the street to make sure that they have the backup and the staff that they need to be safe. But if you can imagine, I think there's 12 or 13 in Ridgecrest and 49 working the streets of Bakersfield. And if you look at the population and the crime, I think you'll get a feel for what we're dealing with. Ridgecrest Jail wasn't just picked out of the air. You have to understand that the sheriff can only cut from certain areas of the department because the Constitution says I'll be the coroner and I'll have a coroner's office. And it says that I cannot cut deputy sheriffs that are bailiffs or transportation of prisoners because the judges decide how many of those deputies that they're going to have. Having a main jail is a constitutional issue. By the Constitution, the sheriff must have that. I have to have staff for that. So you take those things out of the realm of where I can cut, it comes to deputies on the streets. And if you think it feels bad losing a jail, there's going to be places that are going to be losing deputy sheriffs on patrol. There will be substations, unless we find a magic bullet, that won't have 24-hour coverage. There won't be a deputy on duty. A deputy from, for example, Fraser Park, the deputy will probably respond after 3 o'clock in the morning from Lamont. That's what we're facing. And so how do I, in good conscience, keep a jail open in Ridgecrest at $600,000? That's 6 deputy sheriffs. Money-wise, where would I get those? I mean, I'm scrimping right now. So this saves us mid-year $1.189 million, which is $2.5 million over the year. And so I didn't cut Ridgecrest Jail for sport. I really didn't. I love this place, and if you think I wanted to come out here and face a crowd about closing the jail, I did not. Trust me. But it's what I'm sworn to do, and this isn't anybody's fault. This isn't Supervisor Gleason's fault. This isn't the county's fault. This isn't my fault, for that matter. It's the price of oil, and we can't change that price of oil. So there's going to be cuts. We're already working on the July budget and trying to mitigate what's coming in July, and because we have another 2.5%. Is it 2.5, John? I think so, yeah. 2.5% coming in July. We're just talking about 1% here. So this is we're in a dire position, and I don't have the answer to it. When the price of oil changes, then we'll reassess. But I really don't. I don't have any other options, quite frankly.
Okay, I had promised Jennifer and the contingent from California City that they could ask their questions first. Did you want to ask anything first?
Yes, I do.
And please introduce yourself and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Breeden. I'm Mayor Jennifer Wood from the City of California City. It occurred to me when Supervisor Gleason was speaking and also Sheriff Youngblood that when you close a jail, I mean, in California City, we transport our prisoners to, if they can't book in Mojave, we bring them to Lerdo directly. What kind of costs are going to be incurred by the city of Ridgecrest to now transport those folks? I mean, that.
Well, first of all those people that are booked into Ridgecrest don't have to be transported. Some of them are remands from the court, and the transportation unit from Bakersfield is here Monday through Friday because the courts are active. So anyone that's arrested or taken into custody during that period of time, they will take then back to Bakersfield. So that's going to mitigate some of it. We currently do it that way right now. So the numbers that are booked in the Ridgecrest jail don't necessarily mean every single one of them have to be transported.
Okay, thank you very much, because I was concerned about, the cost to Ridgecrest, the city of Ridgecrest, to do that. But, I didn't keep in mind that you have these other amenities here as well. Thank you.
Tom, did you want to say anything?
Tom Wheel, City Manager for California City. Obviously, I'm looking for savings for California City, and transport is one of our biggest issues of taking officers off the street and going, because Mojave, 9 times out of 10, can't keep our prisoners. We transport to Lerdo. You mentioned you have transportation coming from the courts here. Is there ability to work a route system where they can come through Cal City on these type of activities? Is that something that we could discuss?
We certainly could look at that, but when you have prisoners that you're transporting from point A to point B, when you start making stops out of the way, you're really putting yourself, exposing yourself.
Do they go to Mojave?
They could.
Okay, so they can.
If you went to Mojave, yes, you could.
We could coordinate something
yes.
of that nature.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jim Suvar, the CEO from the hospital, I promised him next. And then there is no promises. What we are going to do is line up, and so you could speak. Jim, if you want to come up, please. And if you want to speak, please, please, please don't hesitate to do so. That's why we asked them here. And they graciously agreed to come because, as he said, I'm sure he didn't plan to come over here and have a party. So,
Well, I did, but it didn't work out.
Okay, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor Breeden. Jim Suver, CEO of Ridgecrest Hospital. And certainly, Sheriff, I understand meeting budgets, and we have a few challenges at the hospital as well. I wanted you to make sure that you are also aware that we've been very blessed by great support from our law enforcement, both the Ridgecrest Police Department as well as your deputies. But we rely on them for making sure our emergency room functions properly. And anything that changes the ability of our officers to respond and move patients through after being medically cleared, or support us when we have prisoners that are violent and potentially hurting staff and other patients, causes me great concern. And I'm very, very nervous that this change is going to take some of our officers out of town, which means we're going to be holding patients longer in the ER that probably should be transported either to the jail or outside of town ultimately. And of course, I'm responsible for the safety of my staff, my patients, as well as making sure that our emergency room does not get backed up because we are the only provider in quite some time. So I urge you to also consider some of the impacts that we might have, Sheriff, as well at the hospital. Thank you.
And just so you understand, there are city police departments that have their own jail. The small cities in the county do not pay the sheriff anything for, or the county, anything for the use of that jail. Bakersfield Police Department pays booking fees. I don't know, it's a pretty large sum. So I'm required to have a central jail for booking in the county. What makes our county so wonderful is 8,100 square miles. It also makes it more difficult for law enforcement and for fire to protect the public.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you for that.
Good evening. Captain Jed McLaughlin, Ridgecrest PD. Sheriff, the numbers that you threw out for booking at the jail, are those just Kern County numbers? Or do those count?
Yes, those are
Yeah,
counted.
because we book over 900 here. Another over 250 we transport to the Mojave Jail or CRF in Bakersfield. You mentioned BPD gives you money to use the facility. Isn't that about 50,000 a year or so?
I don't know what it is.
Don't we have somebody here that knows that? Maybe?
No, he would know. My jail chief
Doesn't-
is not here.
Doesn't the state reimburse for booking fees?
Bakersfield pays booking fees.
Doesn't the state give you money for that?
I think, yes, they do.
About 300 and some thousand a year
It could
last
be.
year.
I don't know.
600 or 61,000 a quarter, I think it is. That's off the state comptroller's website. For those of you that want to know, you can look it up. I respect what you have to do, Sheriff, but you mentioned earlier that you don't want to take deputies off the street or officers. That's exactly what closing the Ridgecrest Jail has done. We are going to be on the road constantly. We book 1,100 people into Kern County over last year. Granted, some of those you could probably double up or keep in our holding facility here for up to 12 hours. But when in fact, if you even cut that in half, that's 500 trips to Bakersfield. That doesn't count the sheriffs, the CHP. I don't know what CLPD's numbers are, or anybody else in the county. 500 times when you're staffed with only 3 officers on duty, sometimes 2, a good day is 4, minus injuries, sickness, or whatever. So my question to you is, you said you don't want to take officers off the street, but when you have your deputy working at night out here, I believe there's only 1 on at night. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think that's correct. And the sheriff could clarify that. If he has to go to Bakersfield, isn't it true he's not on our street anymore?
Yes, that is true.
I mean, so the county has no coverage when that deputy is gone, which obviously we would help, when needed. And I'm sure they would do the same if we were short, because we have a great working relationship. A great business person told me earlier today, 1% cut out of a business budget. There's plenty of fat to be cut at 1%. We all have stuff at 1% that you could cut. Is there any other alternatives that you could do, sir?
The fat has been cut out of our department for 3 years. There's no services and supply key. The county administrative officer is sitting there. He can tell you if we have any fat in the sheriff's office. There is none left. I wish there were.
Thank you, sir.
Those of you sitting in the back, there is places up here. Please come up so you can hear more fully. There's probably 10 or 12 seats here. We can pull the reserve signs off those. Thank you. Mr. Stein.
My name is Roger Stein. I'm a practicing attorney. This August, I'll have been here for 40 years in Ridgecrest. So I think I know some of what I'm talking about. Has there been any analysis done of what it is going to cost the county and the city of Ridgecrest when you close that jail? Because now you're taking officers out of here for 4 to 6 hours to make trips to Mojave, to make trips to Bakersfield. You've got the cost of the fuel for the vehicles. You've got the wear and tear on the vehicles. And you are, in fact, taking officers off the street. You're going to be taking Ridgecrest police officers off the street and endangering the safety of this community by doing that. We're spread thin enough as it is, as I understand it. And the cost of this is most of it's going to land in the laps of the city. So how much is this going to cost when you close the jail? It's like you got a 1% budget cut, but Ridgecrest is absorbing 100% of it by having this jail closed.
No, that's an incorrect statement.
Well, it's like being 5%. There's 5% unemployment in this country, but when somebody doesn't have a job, they're 100% unemployed, not 5%.
Well, but if I could explain to you, the people that live in the Kern River Valley, when the deputy arrests someone in Kern River Valley, what do they have to do? They put them in the car, they drive to Bakersfield, and they book them.
Right.
Delano, Fraser Park, I'm sorry? It's 40, 50 miles, it's an hour, same distance to Mojave. And my point is, this happens all over the county. This isn't just Ridgecrest. Ridgecrest has had the jail here, but if we were to take 3 deputies off the Kern River Valley, Mick Gleason and I would be in Kern River Valley tomorrow night doing the same thing we're doing here, because it's not going to be fair no matter where we cut.
Well, there are lots of alternatives. Why close the jail in Ridgecrest? Right now, we have people that are taken here and booked, and we don't take officers off the street. Why don't you close the jail in Mojave? That's an alternative. The people in Mojave can go to Bakersfield or to Ridgecrest to book people.
But would that really make sense to book people in Mojave, then move them to Ridgecrest, and then have to go back the other way?
Mojave.
This is about money. It's not about what's right or wrong. If you go to the store and you have $500 in your pocket, you can't spend $600, and that's the position I'm in.
Well, there must be other alternatives, and by taking officers off the street in Ridgecrest, I think you're endangering the safety of the community.
Where do I
That's
take
what
the
we're
officers
doing.
off the streets at? That's my question. Because
Well, you're taking them off the street when an officer who could book somebody here has to stick them in their patrol car and drive them 120 miles to Bakersfield and spend about 6 hours doing it instead of being here and patrolling the streets.
no, they can go to Mojave and book, and it's just like everyone.
Well, that's only 4 hours. You're still taking them off the street. And let
That's
me
driving
ask,
pretty
let me
slow.
ask you another question, okay? Every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, that's not a holiday, there's a bus full of prisoners brought here from the main jail in Bakersfield. They're put in the jail, and those prisoners then await being brought into court and having their cases heard in court. So the jail is being used for that purpose.
By deputies, transportation deputies act as the guards. They don't just drop them off.
So the jail will be open for that purpose?
It will
then?
be.
Okay. It's better than dropping them off at McDonald's and hoping they walk on over the court. Well, the only other thing I can say is I've been here for 40 years. When I was here, we had to do virtually everything in Bakersfield. And we have fought for 40 years to move services over here. It's been a slow, agonizing process. We, in this area, are second-class citizens. We're treated just like that. We get everything last, and when anything's taken away, it's taken away from us first. That's been the history of this place for 40 years, and I think it's most unfortunate, and I don't think it's necessary. So.
Mr. Diamano.
Anthony Damiano, Ridgecrest. I understand that the cities in Kern County will be cut, and Ridgecrest is going to have about a $3.6 million cut this year. Is that correct, Mayor? From our property taxes?
I don't know what our property taxes are going to be for this year. I'm sorry, I don't. Dennis, do you have that figure, or do you know? Anybody know?
I got
I'm
it.
sorry,
yesterday.
we can get it for you.
I got it yesterday from one of your staff.
Thank you.
$3.6 million.
Thank you, Tony.
So now that $3.6 million is going back into the Kern County budget. $600,000 of that could be used to keep our jail open. Thank you.
I'm good with that one as well, just so you know.
Hi, I'm Paul Wheeler, and I'm a citizen of the city of Ridgecrest. And I have a couple of comments, and I'd like to thank Sheriff Youngblood and Supervisor Gleason for coming over from Bakersfield this evening, and thank the council for having this meeting. I'd kind of like for you to take a look at your decision from a little different perspective. not everyone who's arrested in the city of Ridgecrest is one of the 2%ers. They're not murderers. They're not rapists. They might be drunk drivers, possibly an engineer who works on the base, or a businessman who's made a mistake at night or during the day. They've gotten caught by the Ridgecrest Police or the Sheriff's Department, and now they're going to be transported to Mojave, where they'll be kicked out of jail in Mojave, left to their own devices to find their own way home, maybe miss a day's work or so, or go to CRF in Bakersfield, where I think that you should be reminded that an 18 or 19-year-old misdemeanor female a couple of years ago was released from CRF in Bakersfield and raped on the streets of Bakersfield. There's a lot more to this. There's a more human aspect to this than just deputies and police officers being off the street. There's a direct effect to our community, and I think it's a negative effect, and I'd really like to see you look a little harder at this and maybe not backfill those unfilled positions at the jails in Bakersfield. I'm sure that they're operating right now. I understand that they're probably under mandatory overtime, but they are getting paid time and a half for doing it. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Mayor, thank you for having this and holding this. Sheriff, we appreciate you coming down. Thank you. Mr. Gleason, thank you for being here. Public, community, law enforcement, families, and supportive people of what's happening in this town. All right, I did go to school and I do have an education, but speech wasn't a good one on my end, so excuse me if I don't come correct with some of the stuff I'm saying. Just an intro, my name is Yusuf O'Day. I'm owner of actually Yusuf O'Day Bail Bonds. I also own numerous other businesses, and I'm an investor in this community. I've been a part of Ridgecrest for 30 years, since kindergarten all the way up to Burroughs and so on. So I've been in this community. I've had the honor of meeting Mr. Youngblood, speaking to Mr. Gleason, so I hope nobody takes this personal. Obviously, we're sitting here and standing here talking about just business, so that's what we're going to talk about. Information for the public and the community, just so they're aware. Obviously, they're probably thinking I'm standing up here for the sake of my bail bond business. I'm going to give information on that. It is our Eighth Amendment right to post bail, just like Captain Wheeler said, retired Captain Wheeler. We do make mistakes, and we are human, so not everybody that commits a crime is a criminal, and we have the right to fight that crime and be brought to justice. That's our right as Americans. Bail has been proven to work, so I'm a believer in bail. 90% of the people that do post bail do show up to their court arraignments, are held responsible and accountable by our bail bond agency. Forfeiture rates are zero, which turns into zero warrants, which turns into zero expenses, which turns into zero costs on the courts. That number is a proven factor that 90% of people that post bail do make all their court appearances and are entered into court with their final judgment. So just information on that. Decision of closing the jail. As a person, I do feel that it would be very detrimental to this community. It will put a financial strain on this community, and it also will put a strain on our law enforcement that is already in a strain. Be honest with you guys. For the community that's not aware of a lot of the criminal laws or that's not aware with the justice system, we did have a passing of a billing that's already impacted us, and that's called AB 109, where we decided to turn felonies into minor misdemeanors, turn misdemeanors into infractions, and cut them loose. I mean, that was a vote, that was a budget cut, that was a strain. That that ABO 109 has not only took a toll on our community, it's taken a toll on the mindset of the criminal, Mr. Youngblood. As a person that deals with the human, with the public, you're telling people, not you, AB 109 has told people you can commit a crime and get an ankle bracelet. So the crime has gone from a minor burglary, what you call a 488, to a major burglary. I just had a friend's house not too long ago that just went to Mammoth to enjoy a trip to Mammoth that came back 2 days ago to his car being gone and $500,000 worth of jewelry and family possessions being gone. Because you're telling the human race that you can do what you want. You can run the streets. If you commit this crime, you can go on to the next better and bigger crime. I read some articles in the paper, and I've heard from some of the law enforcement in town here, and now we're going to turn felonies into minor felonies, and we're going to cite those out because of this decision. We're going to just let these people on the street. What you're telling people is your next step is not stealing a candy bar. It's going to a full-blown out bank robbery or going to the next bigger crime. I mean, is it going to take one of our own to get hurt, to get raped, to get killed, to get this fixed? My knowledge is public safety is always number one, which you touched on that, Mr. Youngblood, so I understand your position. I really do understand it. I just don't understand why the decision wasn't sought out. I thought AB 109 did save some money. It made some cuts. It dropped our officers on the street from 4 or 5 to 3. It caused misdemeanors to be cited out, which puts them back out on the streets. With this, you're going to take more officers off the street. You're going to take more deputies off the street. I mean, you talk about a radius of the county. Our radius is pretty big out here, Mr. Youngblood, as of Ridgecrest and its surrounding areas called Inyakern, Randsburg, Johannesburg, stretching out the outskirts of Ridgecrest. So you have one deputy out here. I'm pretty sure the safety of that deputy is now jeopardized because if he's going to call on Johannesburg, who's going to handle Inyakern? And vice versa. As a business owner, I do study financials, and I kind of don't see the savings. I understand the number $600,000 was put out there. You're taking these deputies here, number one, that I don't know if they were asked to transport out to Bakersfield. What if they don't go? These are deputies that have lived here for over 25, 30 years. I know one of them that's lived here for 30 years and worked for your department out here for 30 years. I know another one, sorry, there's only one of her here, so I don't mean to put her out there, but her whole family's based out here. Her friends, her family. There's a couple other deputies that have relocated out here and made this place their home and have purchased homes. So, I mean, I don't know if these deputies, obviously it's not my business and their personal business, not mine, are willing to go to Bakersfield. I don't know if that was a question aroused. I mean, deputies have given 30 years worth of their life for this department to be told, hey, you're gone the next morning? What if they don't want to go to Bakersfield? It's a 120-mile turnaround radius every day, which I have some questions on their behalf for that.
But just so you understand,
Yes, sir.
Every deputy here, the day you come to work, you sign a form, and when you apply, and you check the box where you will work and where you won't. And if you check a box, you'll work anywhere in the county. That's part of the process.
Good.
And so, I mean, it's I've lived in Boron before, as a sergeant. So
Right.
That's just part of what we do.
On a business side of it, Mr. Youngblood, I completely understand the check of a box. I understand that on a business side and what they committed to. On that note, I was talking about a personal side and what they're going through. what they're dealing with, how it's tearing them apart as people. So that I was talking about that, but I do understand that they probably did check that box. I don't know if some of them remember checking that box 30 years ago, but they probably checked it. But who knows after 30 years if they remember that. The extra drive, the wear and tear on vehicles, the wear and tear on your vehicles, the wear and tear on the deputies. I don't understand where the savings is coming about. So I do have some questions that I am going to ask in regards to that. I do want to remind, obviously, we all know this, we are 120 miles away from Bakersfield. We're 50 miles away from anything that's called life out here in Ridgecrest. You mentioned some other places that are a little closer to Bakersfield than the hub county city, which is the city of Bakersfield. You said we had 235 bookings here. I don't know where that information came from. Obviously, Captain McLaughlin said we had 900. I can tell you. We
Talking about sheriff bookings. He's talking about Ridgecrest PD bookings.
Okay. So that was sheriff booking. How many does Mojave have? Did we check that?
Yeah, we've got the information here.
Total bookings for Mojave, 1,224 for 2014, 1,152 for 2015, 683 of those were SO bookings, and other agencies account for those.
So 683 was the sheriff bookies. And the sheriff's department runs Roseman out there, right?
Roseman, Boron, Hatchview.
Correct. You mentioned remands. From my understanding, Mr. Youngblood, that bus transport's only every so often Mondays, but it's really Tuesday and Thursday. Can you tell me where the other 3 days came from? Your bus here is not here 5 days a week.
I don't know how many days. I thought it was here 5 days a week. But you also have the deputy sheriffs that work in Ridgecrest are furnished a patrol car. If they live in Bakersfield, I provide them with a patrol car to drive to work. When they leave here, if there's a prisoner that needs to be transported, they can take the prisoner when they go because they have that patrol car going to Bakersfield.
The bailiff or the deputy?
Every deputy that works patrol in Ridgecrest has their own car.
Okay, so the deputy, are the deputies that are, this might be a question that I might, so if you don't want to answer that, you don't have to. The deputies that are leaving from here, are they being paid from the time they leave here?
You're talking about the detention deputies?
Yes.
They don't have their own, they don't have a patrol car. They don't drive, they don't work patrol.
Okay. I'm asking the deputies that are, the 5 deputies that are the bailiffs, the 5 bailiffs that are here.
Yes.
Are they being paid for transportation and time from the minute they leave Ridgecrest?
If they take a prisoner, yes.
And if they are just showing up to their job in Laredale?
If they're a patrol deputy, they're to be in their zone before time to go to work, and they work the full shift, then they drive. They're driving on their own time.
So they're unpaid 120 miles one way and 120 miles the next way?
No, they're driving on their own time.
They're unpaid?
Yes.
And under labor laws, how does that work out when they're working a 12-hour shift?
I don't know.
I think the sheriff's department might have a bigger problem with that in the future.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yusef, I know we have a lot of other people waiting. If you could kind of summarize, I'm not trying to rush you.
It's okay. I do appreciate that, Peggy. One last question. How many days was the Mojave jail closed this last year? Do you
I
have that number?
have no idea.
48 times? And how many times was the Ridgecrest jail closed?
I
And
have
what
no idea.
reason was the Mojave jail closed versus the Ridgecrest jail being closed?
I can't answer your question. I don't have it.
A lot of times, Mr. Youngblood, during your conversation here, you were talking about the opportunity to for the Ridgecrest agencies out here to take the people to Mojave. They don't have that option so often because that jail is always closed, or is closed very often. And with that
It has
also,
the same staff that Mojave has. same number. So they should be open the same amount of times.
Okay, the numbers, based on numbers that I've read.
Unless somebody's off on extended leave or sick
Okay.
leave or something like that.
And then what happens with the females? They automatically have to go to, that's a policy question that I have. Why? I mean, the female issue of having a female deputy that can receive males versus a male deputy that can't receive females, I think it'd be the opposite. I think that's a procedure that should be changed too, because you're going to find that in Mojave also. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. That's what I have to say. I do appreciate your guys' time, and thank you.
You said thank you.
Bob McDermott, citizen of Ridgecrest. I want to preface my first question with a recollection. I'm going to say 20, 25 years ago, I read a small little blurb in our newspaper here that said in February, we're in February now, that the Sheriff's Department's budget for overtime for the year had already been spent. That was 20, 25 years ago. There's a website called Transparent California that I stumbled on a few years ago. And looking at it yesterday and today, and I'm going to make the assumption that the information on there is accurate, because I think it comes from the state or the county, I'm not quite sure. But in either case, 2014, which was the most recent information on there, there's a total overtime for the Sheriff's Department of approaching $12 million overtime. And I know part of the problem here is trying to find money, so we're looking for solutions. And I guess one of the first places I would think one would look is at the overtime. I mean, even a 1% or a 10% cut in overtime, I'm not talking about cutting anybody's salaries or anything, just figuring out why is there almost $12 million in overtime. And if that could be cut 10%, there's 1.1 million plus there.
Well, just so you know, in the sheriff's office today, there's 71 vacant deputy sheriff positions.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the overtime is where it's at, because we've been cut. There's 71 vacant positions. If they were filled, Ridgecrest has 2. There's 2 vacant deputy positions. If they were filled, you'd have 2 more deputies out here. And when the more you cut back, the higher the overtime goes.
So is that because you can't fill them, or we don't have the money?
Don't have the money to fill them.
So it's more cost effective to pay upwards of $118,000 a year overtime than it is to hire somebody else? Or?
You have to have authorization to hire more, to fill positions. You keep vacant positions as a salary savings to make your budget. That's how the system works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and one last question, and then I'll leave. The jail, is it owned by the county? Is there a reason Ridgecrest can't rent it? I don't know. How does it work?
It's a county building.
Okay.
So, but as far as the
So
rental,
as far as it
I can't
being
answer
closed,
that.
Ridgecrest...
It's going to be used during the court, with the courts.
But Ridgecrest prisoners, the Ridgecrest police, can't use it. They can't...
They could use it, but they can't leave a prisoner there.
Okay. So they would be put there for a few hours until they could be transported, assuming it's closed? They'd be transported then within a few hours?
No, they would have to stay with... Ridgecrest can't leave a prisoner any place, just like a deputy can't. You got to stay with your prisoner, unless you have a jail where you can book them.
Okay, so if the jail is closed, then it won't be used, other than, as you're saying...
We all agree. We're talking about $600,000 that's not in the budget to pay to keep this jail open. It's really that simple. I want the jail to be here. I want the jail to be open. I agree with everything that everyone said.
Yeah.
But it takes $600,000 to keep it open. That was cut from my budget, and I don't have any place else to cut other than deputies on the streets. And that's, I'm not going to take any more deputies off the Ridgecrest streets by taking a deputy, and to keep a jail open, take a deputy from here and 3 others from other places. Then we're right back where we started. And I have to have the deputies on the streets. It's jail deputies or patrol deputies.
Right.
That's
and
the choice.
I understand that, but I'm just trying to figure out where the Ridgecrest Police Department could play a part in that? I mean, if it's owned by the county, but Ridgecrest would have to come up with $600,000, say, we'll pay $600,000 to keep this jail open, and then it would still have to be.
Well, I'm not trying to extort money from
No,
Ridgecrest. Trust me, I'm not here for that reason.
I understand that. I'm just trying to figure out can we not run it? It has to be run by the county, is that it, by the sheriff's department, or?
Well, the Ridgecrest, any city can have their own jail.
Right.
If they choose to.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out. If
But
we
this
were to
one's still
choose
going to be used for the court holding.
So it could be an option where Ridgecrest would say, hey, we'll buy the jail. I don't know what you do, but that's a possibility.
Certain.
Okay, thanks.
Jessica Weston from the Daily Independent, so I'm a member of the press, although I live in Ridgecrest. Okay, first question. It was just mentioned that when you have a smaller staff, the overtime then is higher. So sometimes something that looks like a cost savings on paper may lead to an unexpected cost that you didn't anticipate. And I think that's what a lot of people are asking about here. Has that kind of thought gone into this decision? I mean, you cut in one place, but then are there going to be sort of like balancing issues where it costs more in other areas? How carefully have you considered that?
Well, my staff has looked at this. This is really as simple as removing $600,000 in employees and moving them to Bakersfield where they're going to have to be filled because we're opening a new jail. That staff has to be there.
Right.
So if you fill those and keep these here, you've lost $600,000. That's not in the budget. That's as easy as I can put it. I don't know how else to put it.
Okay. Second question that I had is you informed the Board of Supervisors of this sort of plan last week. Were they aware of it prior to that, or were they hearing it for the first time?
No, I sent an email to each of the board members of what the cuts were going to be.
Okay, but did they give you feedback, or did that take place at the meeting?
I got return emails from a couple of supervisors. I don't think I got one from Supervisor Gleason.
Okay. And
Can I interject for a quick second?
yeah.
That we knew a year ago because we funded the $600,000 for the whole year. So it was a good question. And Donnie and I had talked about this a year ago.
I learned my lesson a year ago because the first time I did not tell
Well,
him.
apparently not.
But I did tell him ahead of time.
Okay. And yeah, it has been an issue for a year, yeah. Okay, and what would be the absolute best case scenario that you could predict given the current budget? I know it's kind of in flux, but the best case scenario that you could see happening here?
Well, with these cuts in place, we're already looking at another 2.5% coming in 4 months. Mm-hmm. That's going to be deputies off the streets. There's no place else to get them to make those cuts. So substations, patrol in Bakersfield, narcotic unit that's left, the air unit, those are all going to lose employees. They're going to be cut. They'll be put back into patrol. That's coming.
Okay. Any good news? No. Thank you.
Good evening, Sheriff Youngblood and council members, Mr. Gleason. Having been through many of these, been around Ridgecrest, observing city politics for a long time. I'm projecting everybody in the room is going to come away with more information than they ever wanted to know about the jail operation of the Sheriff's Department here in Ridgecrest, but yet probably still find out that the jail's going to have to close. So in light of that, I have some proactive solutions for the leaders of the city, for the citizens of the city to think about taking. One, I guess the first one will be for you, Sheriff, is I would call on you to make it as easy and I guess doable as possible for citizens to arm themselves. Make it real easy to get concealed carry permits.
Can it be any easier in this county?
I don't know. If it's not any easier, then I applaud you, and I encourage the citizens in this town to take advantage of that. In order to take advantage of that, of course, I believe I understand, and I don't have one myself yet, that they had to pay out about $100 to take some kind of a training course. Is that correct? Something like that? So perhaps the gun shop owners in town can assist in people being able to accomplish that. Most certainly, every citizen in town, every homeowner at least, someone who has a residence to reside in, they can arm themselves within their residence. And I know that there are a lot of them that do so, a lot of them that are. And I'd just like to state that in a lot of people in this town, you can look around this room, it's pretty easy to convince yourself that we're not a lot of children, we're not a lot of old men who can't do this. We're capable of defending ourselves. We're not helpless. And if the criminals element in this town understands that, they're not as likely to come around and want to commit crimes on our persons. I've been told by the gun shop owners, you don't even have to fire a weapon. You just have to show up when you see funny business going around your house and rack a shotgun or rack a semi-auto. Most criminals will exit the area. Out in public, of course, you can't do that in California. You can't even safely, carry a play gun, but you can get a concealed carry permit. So, in light of the fact that this jail closing is, inevitable, and we're being told we're going to have to take police officers off the street, let's protect ourselves. An armed populace is a secure populace. Criminals go elsewhere when they think they're going to have to face arms. Well, steal your gun, get another one.
If you're talking from the audience, the public can't hear you, what you're saying, so.
Yeah, wait and make your comments. I'll try to be brief. I know there's a lot of people. You're going to take a lot of time here. The next suggestion is for, I guess, I don't see the police chief here, so a bit of data that I believe I'm correct about. So this suggestion is for the police chief, for you, Madam Mayor, council members.
Jed is here in his stead.
Who?
Jed, Captain McLaughlin.
Okay, Captain McLaughlin. I believe we have two what they call school, quote-unquote, resource officers at this time. I know it was one, but I think it was increased to two. Is that correct? Okay. It's my opinion that those two positions are absolutely unnecessary. If you look at the number of children in school versus the number, like, let's say, per capita, the school grounds are policed anywhere from approximately 6 to 10 times more than the city is. You got a police officer on Burroughs High School that's, under 2,000 students. You got typically 3 officers on patrol in a town that's 25,000 plus. So remove one of those officers from those positions and let them fill in the gap here, transport prisoners. You have another position, in my opinion, is absolutely unnecessary, and that's the code enforcement officer. Now, his main function is to drive around town most days and harass citizens and pick on them because, they got a car parked out, say, in front of their house on the street that they paid for, a little too long, or their grass is too high or something else. Well, put him on transport duty. Now you have 2 officers, no extra cost, really, maybe a little more extra cost for transport duty, and our local problem solved. So those are my suggestions. Thank you very much.
Just, Madam Mayor, if I may, a point of information for the public: the school police officers are paid through a grant that is specific to school officers. So, just so they know.
Thank you.
Lynn Charlon with, I live in Ridgecrest for a while. I don't have any solutions to the problem, but I think a lot of people here are concerned with, excuse me, I have allergies really bad. The crime in Ridgecrest has really gone up recently, over probably the last year. And if you take anybody off the streets, it's just going to it's going to get bad here. The only people who are making money is ADT. You can drive down the street and you can see that there's all kinds of stuff going on. I've been in Ridgecrest just a little while. So I can kind of see how things have regressed in this town, and it's not going in the right direction. Mr. Gleason talks about our quality of life. I don't think we're having that so much anymore. And if you start taking officers and deputies off the streets, our quality of life is going to continue to go down. And you said it's just going to get worse. I'm just talking as a Ridgecrest citizen, concerned about everybody here in the room too. Yeah, so that's all I had to say.
I need to take you to East Bakersfield just for one shift. I need to take you to East Bakersfield for one shift. This town is the cleanest, less crime, less graffiti than probably 99% of the cities in the state of California. I'm not saying I'm with you. It's not perfect, but it is one of the best cities in the state of California. So.
Can I just say something here? It's one of the best cities in the state of California and the least amount of gangs because we have a strong police department. And I applaud them.
I agree with you.
Mike Atkins. I'm a sergeant with the Ridgecrest Police Department. I just have a question. Is there any proposed change to how Mojave Jail is handled currently?
Well, from what I've heard tonight, it's not open all the time, and I think that's something we have to look at. It has to be available. If we only have one on the east side, it has to be open and available. So yes, I didn't know it had been closed. I don't know that it's been closed that much. I just know what I've heard, but I'll find out.
I think it's closed right now, actually, at this moment.
Why are they in here?
No, our guys that are working have to transport. Okay. And here's the other thing. As Cal City already spoke to, I'm sure California Highway Patrol can verify, historically, Mojave's been very difficult to book into. We get a lot of refusals. It's very hard. And I know there's only, I think, 14 beds. And if somebody's under the influence, you can't mix them up. So you can quickly eliminate. Technically, if you have 5 people under influence, 14 could go to 5.
Correct. And then you would have to go transport to Bakersfield.
Correct. Yeah. And so we're talking about now combining Mojave Jail for over 100,000 citizens. So my point is, if Mojave operates the same way, and don't get me wrong, we work very well with the Sheriff's Department, the deputies that are here. I mean, we back each other up constantly because we have to. We have to, especially at night when if there's one deputy, they'll come in town, we'll go out there. Whatever it takes, because it all impacts the citizens of Ridgecrest. But part of what we're proposing here, if you remove this jail, you're affecting us in so many different ways. And I understand you're in Bakersfield and working the streets here. I can already tell you that if a deputy in the county has to transport to Bakersfield, you're taking away all coverage for the county out here. You're taking away additional support that we have, mutual support in the city of Ridgecrest. It just feels like now that there's a budget issue, you're completely abandoning this side of the county.
Tell the folks in Buttonwillow that we're there Tuesday all day because we're closing their substation of 13 deputies, and they feel the same way. But where do I cut?
I don't have your budget. I don't know. You don't. I know, and this is why I'm telling you, because I know you're on the other side. And you're looking at numbers, and I know you've heard a lot of this speak on the personal side, but it will have a drastic effect on our community. And as you said, this community is the way it is for a reason. And we have a base here that relies on a steady, low crime. I mean, there's so many things that can impact that by you removing this jail, you are literally taking officers off the street. We're already facing problems with AB 109, Prop 47. I mean, the same things you're dealing with, but there's a lot of issues right now. Removing this jail is going to have a big effect on us. That's all I have.
I appreciate that.
Tom Wicknick, thank you for coming, Sheriff.
Yeah, Tom.
Appreciate you being here, and Mick Gleason and Mayor for calling this. This was the press release that you put out. Since the Ridgecrest Jail will be closed and all detention staff will be reassigned to Lerdo facilities to fill funded vacancies.
This jail closure will eliminate booking and housing service in the northeast area of our county. This will affect the Kern County Sheriff's Office and allied agencies' ability to book prisoners in Ridgecrest. Deputies and allied agencies officers will be required to transport the arrestees to Mojave. This will cause the arresting officers to be out of their jurisdictions for increased periods when transporting and booking prisoners at Mojave. Now, tonight we found out that there's going to be a lot of traveling to Bakersfield as well, so it's not just transporting to Mojave. The chief of police at the last city council meeting said the effect of this, the minimum effect this will have on the Ridgecrest Police Department is 2 full-time officers gone for the year in total. So that's 2 officers off the street of understaffed police department in the city. But I want to question your one part here that says the staff will be used to fill funded vacancies in Lerdo. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
So we are you have positions that are empty
Yes.
right now that are funded, but do you mean those are more important than by taking our officers that are also in right now funded positions to fill other funded positions and cutting our positions?
A plan that I brought forward on Tuesday put millions of dollars back in play for the county budget, but it required staffing Lerdo at full staff. So when the new jail opens, I can use current staff instead of hiring the $20 million of new staff. So you have to have the whole picture. You can't just take a piece of the pie. That jail has to be staffed.
And when does that have to be
It
staffed?
opens in 2017. And
This is 2016.
yes, 2017 has to open. But you have to start, they're down 27 vacant positions at Lerdo. So you have to have people to work. And I have to fill those positions either with these folks or I have to hire new people.
So
If
why
that
do
makes
we
sense.
have, excuse me, so why do we have to have funded vacancies filled by our funded vacancies that you don't need until 2017?
No, you're not following me. We have to be at full complement by the time the jail opens.
Okay.
But those 5 positions that we're talking about at Lerdo are going to be filled, either right now with hiring new people or these people here, one way or the other, because they're down 27.
Okay.
And they're working overtime. They're working 12-hour shifts and overtime to fill those positions. So we're filling those positions one way or the other. This is $600,000, no matter how you want to cut it up.
How long does it, and this is for inquiry now,
Sure.
How long does it take to hire and train a corrections officer?
We don't have corrections officers. We have detention deputies.
Okay, detention.
You're talking 14 to 16 weeks just for the academy.
Okay.
And then you have the time it takes to go through the process of hiring them. It's about a 6-month to 7-month process.
Okay. So why don't we at least put this off for 6 months or 7-month process until we get into the July cycle of your budget cycle and not take our people to fill those vacancies that are funded?
The $600,000 to $300,000, because half a year, is out of this budget. It's taken mid-year. It's not projection for the next year.
Okay. Well, obviously I disagree, and respectfully, and I would also like to then just go back to the side of it that is so important, is that with 3 officers on the street, 1 transporting to Bakersfield, maybe 1 in court because they have to be there to sit there for their case all day, leaving 1 officer and the watch commander on duty, and a call comes out, and I hear this I'm a volunteer with the police department. Officer need backup, and there's nobody there.
There's always someone that can come out of the courts when an officer needs a backup. There's always, if it's a serious case, the transportation deputies can respond to calls. They're
Okay.
deputy sheriffs.
I understand that there's a mutual support agreement. That I fully understand. But my point is, and I've even had it happen to me as a volunteer, and I'm out there with the public, and I said, Victor 11 needs support, and in 60 seconds there's an officer coming down the street. I don't think we could get somebody out of the jail that quickly to support somebody in the street.
Just to put it in perspective, if you take the Ridgecrest PD complement and the sheriff's complement tonight that's on duty, and then you go to Bakersfield, there might be 12 deputies working Bakersfield tonight. Now, if you put that in perspective, what the crime that's occurring there with 12 deputies, they get officer needs backup every single night. And it's because there's 71 vacant deputy sheriff positions in the county out of 500. There's 71 of them that I can't fill because there's no money to fill them.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't have the money to fix it.
Okay. Then I'll close with, we know our disagreement. I just believe that the wrong choice is being made at this point. Respectfully, I disagree with you, and that is that our public safety here in Ridgecrest is dependent on our officers and your deputies being available when we need them, and this is not going to let that happen. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Tom.
Hi, my name is Debbie. I'm the founder of Ridgecrest Addiction Awareness, and I deal with a lot with people that have a lot of issues going on and are dealing with the police. I really think that this is going to cause a huge impact in our community, many reasons. People come with the hospital and they had overdose. They come back too and they are combative. And they have to call somebody to transport them and put them in holding or something like that. Or they're fighting, a mother, a wife and a husband or something are fighting. If there are not police officers there to be able to help that person there because they're transporting, that's going to be 20 minutes longer that this person's going to wait. It's already, especially out in Inyokern and out over near Walmart where the sheriffs only go, I know people that have waited 20 minutes just for a sheriff to come at that point. So if there's only one sheriff on and that sheriff's transporting, and the Ridgecrest Police Department can't go in that vicinity, then who's going to help this person? This person's going to be either beaten, raped, hurt in any way because they're waiting for a police officer to come. And they're waiting, and nobody comes. Would you want that for your family? Would you want that for your wife? Would you want that for your child? That happens here in Ridgecrest. Maybe we don't have the big crimes like murders and as many gangs as you think we do. But we have those things going on. We have things. Just last month, we had at least 4 overdoses in Ridgecrest. 4 overdoses. That's 4 lives, okay? That I know of, only that I know of. That's lives. Those lives matter here in Ridgecrest. And I'm not saying that you don't think it matters, because I'm sure it does matter to you, but Bakersfield matters more. And that's the problem. Out in Ridgecrest, we all feel, I know myself, I feel that Ridgecrest doesn't matter. We don't have a drug rehab here. Why? Because there's no money. Because it's not important. Because we're not close to Bakersfield. There are so many people here in Ridgecrest that could be helped with even just a drug rehab here in Ridgecrest. And we don't have that. Why? Because we're so far away from Bakersfield. Now you're going to take away our jail, where we're housing people, where our police officers depend on. I mean, I see the police officers every day working so hard to take people off the streets, and they get them to Bakersfield. And they're parolees, okay? And they get out 5 days later. So they're already fighting to get these people taken care of. Now they're just going to be like, what? We're going to release you and hope that you contact your parole officer? They're not going to. And therefore, that person is still sitting on drugs. That person is still not getting the help that they need because they're not put into jail. And they're not being checked in with their parole officer. It just makes Ridgecrest feel like we are still not important because we're not part of Bakersfield. But we are part of Kern County. And it's not fair. And I appreciate you guys coming out. And I really appreciate everything that you do for us. And I just hope you look at the numbers again somehow, some way. Find a way to just help us be safe here in Ridgecrest because we need that. Thank you.
Okay, hi. My name is Kathy Walker. I have been a business owner here myself since 1984. I tint windows. I'm on the streets all the time, that sounds funny, but driving back and forth and blah, 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 and the stuff I see in this town is amazing. We have a lot of crime here, okay? In our newspaper, I mean, there's always somebody being busted for something. Somebody's in jail for this. Somebody's being arrested for that. Somebody's broken into somebody's house. I live right on the border of county and city, okay? We're county. I've lived in this house for 28 years, and my permits are all out of my home. I see some stuff that's amazing. And you call the sheriffs, and I'm not blaming anybody, but it takes forever to get anybody out there. Or the issue is, we're sorry, but we're understaffed, and unless it's an absolute emergency, we can't be there, but yet you can tell what's going on. We've had people broke into time after time after time, and then we're going to have less sheriffs. And what's happened, I have grandchildren here that, I have family here. We all have family here. We have to, when these people are being arrested, what I want to know is if there's more than one person being arrested, say there's 5, how does that work? Where are they going? Where are you going to keep them? Where are they hanging out, Denny's? I mean, really, that's the part I want to know. You're taking a jail away, and I understand Bakersfield's important. I get it. You're building a new jail in Bakersfield. A lot of those people, when they're released, come to Ridgecrest, okay? And we're not going to have a jail here? I don't get it. I don't understand the money part. Don't want to try to understand that. I'm concerned with the people. These are our homes. These are, and it's true. People, the drugs around here are crazy. You see it daily. It's obvious what's going on. I really feel there's a place on the corner of where I live that I swear it was a meth lab, and that's why it blew up. Okay, there's no doubt in my mind. Okay, it's gotten that bad, and I see it daily. And I understand these guys are overworked. I understand you're understaffed or whatever the case may be, but why are we building another jail? Why?
You're comparing.
I don't mean to be mean here,
no,
but please.
Let me answer your question. You're comparing apples and oranges. The jail in Bakersfield.
I really wish you'd quit insulting us. I do. You keep bringing up that we're not important here. I just want to make that clear.
You asked me a question, and okay. I'm going to try and answer it.
Okay.
The jail in Bakersfield houses people for up to 50 years in sentences. Ridgecrest Jail, people, they're not sentenced to Ridgecrest Jail. They can't live and stay there. They have to be moved to Bakersfield if they're going to be in jail for any length of time. That's the nature, that's the type of jail it is. It's not a Type 2 facility. Okay. So the state won't allow you to house prisoners there. And the jail that we're building in Bakersfield was built on a $100 million grant from the state of California. So that's the best I can answer your question.
But we don't get none of that?
I can't take a piece of the jail and bring it out here.
I'm talking about the $100 million. Is that in Kern County?
That was for that jail specifically.
Kern County?
Yes, for that jail
but
specifically.
But aren't we part of Kern County?
I can't argue. I can't make it any
I'm trying to
plainer.
understand.
Well,
and I'm sure
I've
made it
as plain as I can. That jail is built with that $100 million.
Okay. Where, when you arrest more than one person, or 2, or 5, or 6 in that day, where are you housing them until they get transported? I mean, these guys can't be yo-yos. I guess they're going to have to be, but where are they being housed?
The same thing that occurs in Fraser Park, same thing that occurs in Kern Valley. When an arrest is made, it's a 2-hour turnaround to go, minimum, to go to Bakersfield.
I understand that, but you can only put how many people in one car?
It doesn't matter where it's the same all over the county.
So where are these people, where are you?
They're taken to Laredo or to Mojave if they're on this side.
But if the guys are gone, let's just say whoever's doing it is gone, and there's an arrest, where do they go? And they don't have that person to drive them there because there's only so many that can drive back and forth.
A deputy from Mojave will come get them.
If they're busy?
Well, we could play hypotheticals all day. I mean, I can't.
I know, but it seems like, hear my heart. It seems like I came to this town as a single parent when my daughter was in '84. She was 4, 5, 6 years old, whatever. She's 37 today. The point is, I felt safe here because I was a single parent. I used to ride my horse down Ridgecrest Boulevard. I don't like it here anymore. I don't feel safe here anymore, and there's a lot of people that feel that way. And I fear for my grandchildren, and everybody's grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. It's gotten to that point. You barely can anymore. We got road rage going down Ridgecrest Boulevard. And I understand, but I hope and pray that there can be a solution somewhere.
I would love to have a solution.
For our safety.
But there's $600,000 that I don't have in the budget to keep that jail open.
It is sad that people's lives...
I don't give the money to me. That's the Board of Supervisors' job.
It's sad that people's lives right now, lives, homes, children's, children, everything.
I don't
is
disagree
based-
with anything you're
is
saying.
based upon a dollar amount.
Evening, Sheriff.
Good evening.
Mayor. If I'm hearing things right,
John, would you identify yourself, please?
yeah, John Abbott, citizen Ridgecrest, one of the volunteers for the town. I support the police and community together. You mentioned the fact that we have a great, clean town, very nice-looking town, and that's through a lot of effort of volunteer time. The Ridgecrest Police Department is marvelous, in my opinion. I came up from San Diego, and this department does wonders for this city. I believe that the criminal element that is in town respects the officers without admitting it. I do believe that the bad guys who come to town, really repeat criminals, depart town after having a few calls from the Ridgecrest Police Department. I like this town the way it is. It's a very nice community. It is beautiful, as you said. It's very clean. Graffiti is cleaned up by volunteers. The town eyesores such as shopping carts are removed by the citizens of the town. A lot of these things are done by the citizenry. As a citizen, I wouldn't mind offering some dollars to round up $600,000 if that's all it takes to keep this place open. I think it's unfortunate that $600,000 is going to close this jail and allow the criminal element that is here to do whatever they feel like they should do. As Mr. Oda mentioned, these crimes, felonies, have been reduced to misdemeanors. And by closing the jail, I think we're just opening the door to the criminal element to just get worse. Very unfortunate, very sad that we're in the state of California on a day like this. Really, really. I think there are alternative ways. You might solicit the community, but I understand that this closure might take place without much more discussion. Very unfortunate, very sad day.
Hi, Tricia Miller. I'm a citizen, longtime 76 citizen. From what I'm gathering, I think we just want answers. So who can we contact? We know your hands are tied, and we all understand that. I do.
Well,
I do.
I want to make it clear, my hands aren't tied. The Board of Supervisors give you a certain amount of money, and then the sheriff spends it in his budget. The cuts, the 1%, $1.2 million, was my choice to cut. I don't want anyone to think that Supervisor Gleason decided to cut the jail. That's my decision based on priorities for the entire county, to cut $1.2 million mid-year.
Right. And
So I want to make sure you understand that.
I do.
Okay.
I misspoke. Okay, so
Can I jump in for a quick second, Trish? Just for, I don't want to interrupt you, stop your flow of thought, but I want to piggyback on what he says, is add a little value to what he's saying. That the Board of Supervisors makes decisions based on the budget we have. And we either can assign cuts to every department, or we could say, okay, you don't have to take a cut, Sheriff's Department, or you don't have to take a cut, Fire Department. And we could actually allocate those cuts to different segments of our budget. But what that would mean is that it would turn the budget process in the county into a free-for-all, and no one would take the cuts, and we would find ourselves perhaps in an extreme position where we would have no library, or no veteran services, or probation department would be cut. Right. Or planning department, or public health, all those other areas that are critical to maintaining the county performance would take a greater cut because of ability for us to say, well, we're not going to give it to the sheriff. So the decision was made by the Board of Supervisors to cut fair and even across the board for everybody to take the cut. But there's something else I think we're missing, and I think I touched on it. Next year is going to be, we're talking about a 1% cut now. Next year we're looking at projecting a 2.5% cut. So as we're going to have a conversation, I think the last gentleman, Mr. Abbott, started touching on something that I think we all need to consider and think about is, it's great, noble, it's horrible that this jail's going, but we've got bigger problems coming down the road that we need to get together to come up with a plan and find resources or civic contributions or neighborhood watch patrols or strategies within the city to offset those cuts that are coming in a much larger way in 4 short months. Because the 2.5% will be cut across the board. And Donnie will be I don't know what you're going to do, but I can't imagine it. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be different. It'll be a more difficult situation we're going to be dealing with in 6 months. And if we save the Ridgecrest Jail, which we hope to do, I'm still working diligently to do, to limp this thing along, it would be for a couple of months. It would be a great thing to do to give it a window to keep it open, so that we could find some other strategy in 4 months to come in and keep it permanently open. But even then, we're looking at 2.5% next year. So I just wanted to remind everybody, as you're thinking through this stuff, that we got bigger problems coming down the road. Sorry.
Well, now you just ruined my whole sentence.
I'm sorry, Trish. I'm sorry.
Because that's what I was just going to say is we as a team, the citizens, how can we help each other? How can we find a solution? If it's just going to get worse, it fluctuates. If it's just going to get worse, how can we pull together as a unit, as a team? I've lived here for a long time. It's a delightful area. Crime is low. In contrast to other communities, I feel 110% safe. I have no fear. I really don't. I've lived in other places. It's safe. That's not my concern. It's everyone is having to take cuts. So what can we do as a team to come up with answers?
Great question. I think that's what we need.
It's a very emotional. I've been listening to everybody with compassion. I hear that. And when I first read this, my knee-jerk reaction was, oh, my God. And I've been using firearms since I was 5 years old with supervision. I know how to handle a gun, but the answer isn't everybody go get a concealed. That would scare me to death, some people having a weapon in their hand.
Well, interestingly enough, the county sent out a survey for a possible sales tax increase to fund the new, one of the things was to fund the new jail, the staffing. There was, 5 items on there, John? And funding new jail, there's no appetite for it. Zip, none, nobody cares.
I care.
It came in 5th.
Yeah. And I think with education, if everybody got more involved, listened to the newspapers, to public announcements. A few years ago, worked closely with the city. Ridgecrest Boulevard changes. And people kicked and screamed and fussed because they were uneducated. I was behind the scenes, so I got the joy of knowing some of the details of why they did bulb outs or why they did the certain shrubs that were planted. But people just fuss and scream because when you're uneducated or unaware, it's an animal instinct to get scared. So I guess what I'm saying is let's pull together as a team, see what we can do to help people out, watch other people's properties, or get involved. Don't be afraid to get involved and read what's put out, listen to the radio, and try to find the solutions on a very passionate subject. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Tricia.
Craig Stump, longtime resident of Ridgecrest, and I have rentals. And one of the things I see is that the rental area, welfare people can't get apartments over in Bakersfield. But the welfare department tells those people, come to Ridgecrest because you can find apartments here. And that's part of they're not necessarily the upstanding citizens that we look for, because Bakersfield is shipping all these people to us, criminal gardens included and everything else. And I don't have a solution for that, but it seems to me you have, in all the communities, you have taxpayers that pay the way for the police department and all the things that go along, but we have the biggest employer, and they don't pay any taxes local to keep us solvent as far as the police department or anything else. The China Lake, the base, aren't in our tax structure. So we come to the supervisors and say, geez, help us out. And all we get is the people coming in from Bakersfield that can't find housing over there because they can't afford it. They come to Ridgecrest. I'm not sure. There's no answers that I can offer. So it's a tough, tough problem. I'd like to see the base cough up some money to help the county out.
Thank you, Craig.
Chip Holloway, you might remember me.
Unfortunately, yes.
I want to thank you for coming, and Supervisor Gleason for being here, and for the mayor to hold those pictures over your head to get you here. I'm reminded of the movie Zero Dark 30, when the guy said, yes, sir, this is the best, worst idea we have. And I think that's been clearly established tonight. For those that don't know, the property tax percentage the city of Ridgecrest gets is 6%. So 6 cents out of every dollar comes back to the city of Ridgecrest to provide public safety. The county gets about 27 cents of every dollar to provide everything. And then there's Prop 172, which I think the fire department probably gets more than you, but the fire department and the police department get part of that, or the sheriff's department. Measure L, we saw this problem coming several years in this community, and everybody in this room is paying an extra tax every month just to maintain what we have. But the last meeting I had with Chief Strand was there were 15 officers funded right now by Measure L in the city of Ridgecrest. And his estimation of what this will cost the police department, I think, is very conservative. I think it would take 25% of Measure L to offset the cost of what the transportation cost, the actual officers' cost and time, the wear and tear on vehicles, and then the additional overtime in the city of Ridgecrest. So I'm estimating 25% of Measure L would have to be diverted to this, which means 15 officers go away, and then 4 more officers that were in Measure L before could potentially go away. The indirect cost to the city of Ridgecrest is unsurmountable. Potential insurance costs, insurance rates, quality of life, the base. We've had multiple meetings with the base trying to hire employees and retention. All those intangibles that we've been able to talk up about our community because of things we don't have, this puts that at jeopardy. Supervisor McGleason, you said something that's very common with elected officials, but it infuriates me. I did 16 budgets in the city of Ridgecrest, and I don't think there ever was a budget that we didn't have to cut in 16 years. I never, ever in 16 years had the luxury of diverting new funds to new area, except when we got TAB funds. That was a joyous occasion, and that was at the end of my career when Alzheimer's was setting in. But the term of cross-the-board cuts to make it fair is ludicrous. That's a good policy when you are just making minimal cuts, but when you're at the level we are today where there is no more fat, you have to make cuts based on priorities. And I think when you look at a $2 billion budget and you get to public safety, the priority becomes much greater than a cross-the-board cut. I guess one idea that I've thought of, and I'm speaking to CEO Nylon, the Ridgecrest City Council, is fire. The fire department, or the fire industry in this country, does much better public relations than law enforcement. And to to equate the value of law enforcement to fire safety is ludicrous at this time. I think everybody would prefer more officers on the street and less firemen. No offense to fire departments, but the need and the type of emergency that a law enforcement officer has to respond to as opposed to a fire department is virtually no comparison. We have 4 fire stations within this region. 3 of them we have control over. The one on base, I don't think we have any control over, but somebody talked about, the base ought to participate in this. I think an MOU with the base fire department could offset the loss of one. But we have a fire station right over here that I think if you close that fire station, you would save well over $1 million. The challenge would be for the county CEO, Mr. Nylon, and you to divert fire funding to the police department.
I
to
did
the
not
sheriff's
pay
department.
him to be here, all right?
Right now,
But I would have.
Calls for service for fire, 70% of those calls are for medical emergencies. They are not responding to fires. And I think I was very instrumental in the last fire contract. I think that the estimated cost of a fire station, and I'm looking at one of my fire experts, is about $2.1 million a year. So closing one fire station to save that jail, I think the people in this community would absolutely be for. So the commitment we need is from the supervisors to make that proposal. And the other commitment that concerns me, because I know how your budget works, is if you were
I'm good with the deal, just so you know. I'm in with it.
But we can't hold you to the deal.
You won't have to.
Once you get $600,000, there's no reason you can just, after 2 years and I go away, spend it somewhere else. But we would need that commitment from you. And then going forward, because it's always been a frustration, it's a huge problem for the council and the city and the city manager for years, is the transportation of officers, of prisoners in this city, even when we had a jail. Yeah. And I think the council and the supervisor and you, Sheriff Youngblood, need to go forward and see if we can change the regulatory requirements for the people that are allowed to transport. Because we shouldn't be taking the highest level of sworn officer off the street to transport prisoners. We need to do something PAC saves the city of Ridgecrest $400,000 a year in man hours, but they can't transport a prisoner. So we need to do something going forward to change the regulations and the requirements.
Well, just so you know, the deputies that transport prisoners don't just transport prisoners. They bailiff, they guard.
I understand that, but that's what I'm saying. I would rather and keep them doing that stuff, but get other people at a lower qualification level and a lower cost to transport prisoners, because I hate taking one of our best people off the street, which will happen in this case, to transport prisoners. But I just trying to come up with a solution, as opposed to, I think we all agree, everything has been said that could be said. It's just that everybody hasn't said it yet. But thank you for being here and to try that approach.
Can I offer a couple comments?
Please.
Chip, I think that was some really good ideas you had there. I think several of them are in play right now. I talked about the $35 million deficit for fiscal year 16 and 17 that the general fund is taking. The fire fund, which is a separate pot of money, is taking a $22 million hit next year for Kern County. What that means is there's going to be a dramatic change in fire services from Kern County throughout the entire county, meaning that we learned yesterday that the fire chief put on the table, I think he named 12 fire stations that he's looking at closing. So there's a difference between how we manage fire than how we manage sheriff. The sheriff is an independently elected guy. He makes his own budget cuts. Any changes in the fire will be made by the Board of Supervisors. But the fact is that the fire is going to take a $22 million cut next year. And on the chopping block, as per fire chief, is Chief Marshall, is Inyakern. So I just learned that. We don't know. We haven't developed any strategies. We haven't really talked it over and understood what we're talking about. But we're looking very hard at whether or not closing fire stations or reducing manning or what adjustments or capital expenditures. But we've got a bogey of $22 million for fire. A really good thought you brought up, and I just wanted to hit that because that's another segment of these budget cuts that are coming down the road in the next 4 months. You mentioned across the board equal. I agree with you. A 1% cut across the board for Donnie at a $123 million a year budget is about $1.2 million. Is that what you're talking about? The same 1%, so you're going to have to cough up find $1.2 million to make your bogey. The libraries, for example, I think is going to be about $72,000. That's the bogey they're going to have. So each department has different ways of contributing to across the board. The percentage is what's even across the board, not the contribution from each department. And one other thing. It's not like every department pays the same thing. Our public safety is almost 70% of our budget. Much like a Ridgecrest, I'm sure that you put an emphasis on public safety. Well, we do too. And we will adjust those percentages as required by the voters and the people who have voiced opinions like you guys are today. We will make adjustments where we can. So I really like your thoughts. You said something else I thought was really interesting too. I forget what it was, but we'll talk afterwards. But thanks for those comments, and keep them coming.
Supervisor, I'd like to ask a question. The
Yes, ma'am.
city, if I've got my figures correctly, is paying county $400,000 a year for their fire costs. How much of that is covered by the costs to operate these facilities here? Do you have any idea?
No clue. John, do you have any idea?
I didn't understand the question.
The city of Ridgecrest pays the county $400,000 a year for their fire service. Of that cost, how much of the cost of operating the fire facilities here, do you have any idea what that percentage is? Off the top of your head, I'm sure you've got those figures right there.
Yeah, I think, as one of the people were talking, one of our stations, they average about $1.6 million a year to operate. So roughly a quarter of the total cost is what the city of Ridgecrest is funding for that.
For one station?
For one station.
Okay.
Right. I think what I heard is that we're still in the preliminary, so we haven't drilled down far enough to get exact numbers. But the rough numbers the ROMs we're using is $1.2 million per fire station. Is a good round estimate of what it costs to manage a fire station with a 3-man rotations, with a staff of 3, and they rotate. It's 3. So we're looking at rotation, we're looking at staffing, we're looking at closures, we're looking at everything. We got to find $22 million just in fire alone, and that dwarfs what we're talking about here. Thanks.
Before we're done here tonight, I want all of you, if you will sign a piece of paper, if you're willing to work on a committee to try to find solutions. We really need your help. You all have been here and said and learned and listened. Others who may not have been able to participate may not have the same level of knowledge that you do, although I don't think it's impossible that they could achieve that. But I'd like to see if any of you would be willing to work to find solutions individually as an ad hoc committee or whatever you want to call it, a group of citizens who care. We'll talk about that afterwards. Please, next.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Stevens. I used to be a city planner before I became a stay-at-home mom. I have a couple questions just to clarify. I'd like to know the cost of the new jail that you keep bringing up.
$135 million.
Okay. So you said you received a grant for $100 million.
That's correct.
So when was the decision made to open the new jail?
A couple years ago.
I'm thinking 2 years ago.
So about when oil prices started to drop, we decided to open a new jail.
I think it was before.
Yeah, there wouldn't be
Right
a
before.
yes vote today, I promise you.
Okay. So the $35 million, where is that coming from?
That's from general fund dollars.
General fund dollars. So is there any possibility in delaying the opening of
No.
the new jail because we have a jail currently that is working?
This is an 800-bed facility that has timelines that must be met. If they're not met, you're penalized, and it has to open on a certain day. And when it opens, you have to have it not fully. You have to have it staffed within 90 days. Very structured, $100 million grant. With the match was a total of about $35 million.
Okay. So do we have the $35 million?
Yes.
We do. Okay. So then also my next question is, you say 1% equals $1.2 million, and we're talking about 2.5% now. So that's $3 million. So have you already started to look at what those $3 million, because you're saying just cutting people,
Yes.
it seems like it would take more than cutting people. So then are we talking about
There's
maybe?
nothing else to cut. We've
Okay.
cut over the last 3 years. The $3 million, if that holds, and we're working on trying to mitigate that, that's 30 deputy sheriffs.
All right. And so if it's my understanding, I was talking with these gentlemen over here, the Mojave jail and the Ridgecrest jail are basically identical in size and dollar amount. Why are we closing the Ridgecrest jail over the Mojave jail? I understand Mojave is centrally located, but it's also closer to Bakersfield than Ridgecrest is.
Correct.
And
Makes
the
it-
population here is also larger
It makes it
than Mojave.
easy. It doesn't make sense to book someone in the Mojave jail. I mean, let me get this straight. If we were to close the Mojave jail and leave the Ridgecrest jail open, then the rest of the desert would not have, they'd have to come this way to book a prisoner and then go that way to take them to Bakersfield. So you'd be overlapping your trip.
Okay. But it would still be closer for most of those places to go to Bakersfield than it is for the people of
Yes,
Ridgecrest.
yes, it would
Yeah.
be.
Okay. And then also, it's my understanding too that the only way to transfer multiple prisoners, a large bulk of prisoners or jail people, sorry, at once is there isn't a van or a bus of any sort of nature here in this town to transfer them all at one time versus taking multiple trips back and forth.
Well, you couldn't arrest one and house them and then arrest another and wait till you had 5 and then use a van to transport them because you'd be then utilizing a jail that's unauthorized, that's not staffed correctly.
Okay.
And so you can't do that. If you arrest 5 people at one time, then a van would be beneficial, but I don't think that happens all that much in Ridgecrest.
Okay. All right. But so there has been serious thought given to not closing Mojave versus Ridgecrest.
In the new budget, as we approach, Mojave Jail could be in play. But if Ridgecrest were to stay open, we might wind up closing both jails because we're spending money between now and July that we don't have. That's going to come out of next year's budget. So the sooner we close that jail, the more money we save for the next budget year.
So then that's my concern. What I was stating is the $3 million. Are we potentially talking about not even having the Mojave option?
It was in play, but we have discussed in our staff that this is deputies. We have to have a jail on the east side. This is deputies. We got no place else to cut but deputy sheriffs. We've cut our civilian staff to nothing. We've cut over the years. We've cut the detention deputies, and they're down 27, and we're down 71 deputy sheriff positions. So I mean, if you look at this chart, everything in red is a deputy that should be there, but we can't afford to pay them, so they're not. It's vacant.
Okay. And so then where are those deputies coming from that you're cutting?
We don't know. I can't tell you
Okay.
until I know how much I'm going to have to cut, where they're going to come from.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric Hurtado, Chief of Police for California City. Don, you just scared me when you just said about Mojave Jail.
Yeah, I
'cause
know.
that's,
I caught you out of the corner of my eye.
You knew I was coming up here. For California City, we have a sworn police department of 20 officers, and last year we arrested just under 1,000. Those majority we do cite and release, but a lot we send to Kern County Sheriff's Department. The discussion of the Mojave Jail temporarily closing overnight is a concern for probably not only Cal City, but California Highway Patrol that also uses the jail in the Mojave area. We frequently get phone calls that saying, yes, we're closed till, it's Friday afternoon, we'll be open back Monday, or it's Wednesday, we'll be open back up on the weekends. One thing that we've recently experienced, and if you can look into this, when we book a prisoner that has some type of medical issues, the Mojave Jail substation won't take them unless they have a clear to book. Doctor sees them to make sure that they're
And
going to survive.
neither will Bakersfield. Just
Yes. So what we'd like to do is stop by at the Tehachapi Hospital, and it's a little bit faster than going to Kern Medical Center. And we have our prisoners see a doctor, and they sign a clear to book. We take them to CRF, the main jail. At sometimes the staff will refuse the clear to book from the Tehachapi Hospital for one reason or another. So that's a concern if maybe we can look into that to see if there's an issue between a doctor from Tehachapi Hospital authorizing a clear to book versus Kern Medical Center. And I just have a couple of quick questions, Sheriff, and I commend you for coming in tonight and being prepared for a negative response here tonight. We faced, because of AB 109 and Prop 47, an increased amount of issues in our community. We would have to send our officers to Bakersfield. Sometimes when the Tehachapi Pass is closed, we do the long route, even when I-5 is closed, where a Cal City officer would go from Cal City up to the 178 and down the canyon just to get a prisoner to Bakersfield. And what we've done is we've tried to get more people in our community involved, and several have attended reserve deputy and officer training through local colleges. How many, do you know how many reserve deputies you have for the county?
Yeah. 10 years ago, we had 500. Today, we have 78. The problem is, to be a reserve deputy today, the state of California requires that you go through exactly the same training that a regular deputy sheriff goes through. So when they go through, become reserve deputies, when they graduate, they go, I could get paid doing this, and they become a regular deputy. So that number, that's a dying breed, reserve deputies.
We have several people in our community, and we have Edwards Air Force Base. A lot of people in our community work at Edwards that would be interested in attending a course on being a reserve. And my question to me is for Board of Supervisors, something that we can do with maybe Saracosa Community College to expand that course of training. So as we talk tonight, we're talking a 1% cut. If we're facing a 2.5% cut, that's going to affect all law enforcement in Kern County.
Well, that's a great idea, Eric. And Saracosa is our college that we use for our basic academy. And we wanted to put a reserve academy on the east side of the county, but we can't get enough students. There has to be, a certain number of students, or Saracosa won't allow us to put on the won't sponsor the academy. So if we got enough, we could do that.
Okay. Maybe after this month's issues, maybe we can get some more community support and people involved and want to take the class. But thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Peggy Chun, and I've been a long-term Kern County resident just outside the city of Ridgecrest, and I really appreciate you being here, Sheriff Youngblood, so that we can ask you some questions. And thank you to the council for having this, and thank you, Supervisor Gleason. I would like to pursue a few more questions related to the new jail. That seems to be the thing that is off limits as far as cutting funding. But what happens if you try and phase the occupancy of that jail in rather than having full occupancy to start with? Because I do know that prisoners have been sent to other jails from Kern County, even other states. But what are the consequences if you don't come up to full speed and deal with the number of personnel that you have?
John Nylon sitting there right now is thinking she could be the sheriff. That's exactly what my plan is to do exactly what you just said. I'm required to open the jail within 90 days. And I'm required to, if I need the beds, to open the number of beds that I need. When the board voted on this jail, for 30 years, we had not had an empty jail bed in the Kern County Jail. People were doing less than 20% of their sentence and being fed capped. We were under a federal court order to kick them out after 20% of their time for 30 years. That's why this board voted to build this new jail. Once they voted for the new jail, we broke ground on it, and we're going forward. Along comes realignment was before, but along comes Prop 47, which more than 50% of the people in the state of California voted for, probably in this room about maybe one. What Prop 47 did was made possession of heroin, possession of methamphetamine, misdemeanors. If you steal a gun and it's worth less than $950, it's a misdemeanor. What handgun is worth more than $950? Not very many. And so they've decriminalized all this stuff. And today, I have 400 empty beds in that jail. That allowed me to look at the plan that you just talked about.
So we can keep our 600,000?
No, that's no.
Trying. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mike Myers. Retired sergeant for the Ridgecrest Police Department recently, and I certainly appreciate you coming over here, Sheriff. I really do. I commend you for that. Supervisor, thank you also, Council. I got a few questions. One of the things I was concerned about as I was looking over the budget here is the probation department. It says $33,684,000. Is that correct? And that's under you, isn't that correct, Supervisor? Probation?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know those numbers.
Okay, so I'm just looking at the numbers. Okay, I have to go off of this right here. And I know that when I worked for the police department, we rarely saw probation department. We rarely seen them over here. In fact, usually the only time that we saw them was when we requested that they come over for some kind of a sweep or something that we were doing here in town. So we don't get the services. We don't get a lot of the services that I see that Bakersfield is offered every single day. Every day, Bakersfield has all sorts of services provided to them, but us over here on East Kern, we rarely get that type of assistance. Now, because of this closure that it's coming up, they're just taking more and more from us. We're already working on a skeleton budget as it is. We've maxed out. We've maxed out everything that we have here in this department. Our volunteers absorb so much from us. We're thankful and very fortunate. And I don't know how we could even function without the volunteers that we have working with us at the PAC volunteers. I don't know how our department and our city would even function. People don't realize what they do for us for free. You know, you commented that we are a very clean community. And we certainly are, and we work very hard to keep it that way. We don't want the problems that Bakersfield has. And trust me, there's so many people that they don't realize. They don't realize. And you know what? They don't realize some of the problems that we have here. But they don't realize just how difficult things are over in Bakersfield. The crime that you deal with and the response times are 10 minutes, that's nothing. That's absolutely nothing. It really is.
4 hours.
Yeah, before you'll even see a deputy at your door. We don't want that here, and we work very, very hard to try to maintain what we have with the limited amount of funds that we've managed to be able to keep and to work with. It's a huge problem for us, and you're talking about another 2.5. I don't know. I mean, I'm being realistic. I don't see how we're going to be able to avoid it. It's inevitable. If we're lucky, maybe we can extend it another year. I certainly hope that we can come up with some additional ideas, and I thank the people that came up here and said, we got to figure this out. Trust me when I tell you this. I care so much about this community. I truly do, and I see what our officers, our supervisors and sergeants that every day have to work and try to figure out how they're going to run their shift with, if they come in every day and they go, I got 3 guys. I got 3 guys that are going to cover my whole shift today. 15 minutes into that shift, boom, you got a 5150, you got a DUI driver, you got somebody that's, a felony that isn't going to be accepted at our local jail more than likely isn't going to be accepted in Mojave either, and going to have to make that trip. And we make plenty of trips to Bakersfield. We make plenty. And that's a 5-hour, if you're lucky, turnaround, if you're lucky. And if they got to go to KMC, add another 6 hours to it. Okay, it's just it's ridiculous. You're losing that officer, and I'm repeating these things, and I'm trying not to repeat what's already been just beat to death. But you're repeating, you're taking these officers away from us, and we're running with 2 guys regularly, if we're lucky. And if one of them gets an arrest or something, booking, he's off the street. Yeah, plenty of times we've had to run out of the jail. A few times we've gotten called at home. Hey, can you get up and come help some people because we're outnumbered down here? So we have a serious problem that is being put on our backs. It's put on the officers because we care. We live in this community, but it's put on the public, the general public's backs also, to try to figure out how we're going to get through this. This is going to really make an impact on our community, and the quality of life and the crime is going to increase if we don't figure out a solution. And sir, I respect you very much. I always have, and I've been a very open, vocal person about how good of a sheriff you are. And I want you to please come up with something for us. I'm really begging you. I'm asking you respectfully. Please come up with something, sir, supervisors. We cannot go without this type of assistance and this kind of services in our community. We're doing without so much, and you're just taking something more away from us. And I beg you, public safety is critical over public luxury. Okay, I mean, if there's some other things that people are just can be cut, I don't know, helicopters. I don't know how many of those we have, 2 or 3 probably, that the Sheriff's Department, I don't know what those cost to maintain. I'm sure it's an enormous amount of money. I'm just asking for any assistance we can, anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carrie Fulton, I'm a citizen of Ridgecrest. I'm a little nervous, so just bear with me. But I'm a solution-oriented person, so what are some of the solutions that we're looking at? We've been given less than a month's notice. People are being affected.
Me too.
So what are we looking at? Are we talking to the local leadership, both on base, off base? What are we? I'm willing to help. I'm willing to step up. But I don't know what you're doing. I'm sure it's something. But can you communicate that to us so we know what we can do? I have a big mouth. I'll tell all my friends, whatever I need to do. But sometimes we don't hear what's going on. So I'm glad you put up, if you want to participate, sign a paper, give them your number. I had 10 ideas over the weekend when I heard about this. So what are you guys looking at right now?
Great question. We just found this out when the assessor assesses the value of a barrel of oil. It comes out with a number. They put it into a grinder, a meat grinder, and they come out with a budget. And when they come out with this budget, which is January, late January sometime, when they say, okay, here it is, this is what we're looking at. So we just found out ourselves within the past couple of weeks. We push it out as quickly as we can because the earlier we get on the problem, the more savings we can achieve down the line. So we've just had this problem. We're just getting going on it. I'm looking at ways to wheel dollars to keep the initial impact, at least to delay it till the summertime. So I'm looking to find ways to wheel CDBG money or any other way I can get dollars from any other part of the county to help offset the cost of this jail. It's to at least keep it open so that we can have opportunity to find solutions further down the road. I talked with Jean Fuller yesterday. We're up here. She came up with a couple of good ideas. She's looking for local dollars in Sacramento, and she's scrubbing, trying to find things. I talked to Kevin McCarthy about it. I've talked to Shannon Grove about it. I've talked to every politician I know knows the plight we're in for the Sheriff's Department and the hits we're taking with that Ridgecrest jail, because I, too, think it is it's not good. I don't know. It's not good. So I'm doing everything I can politically. All the other supervisors are well aware of the situation here, and we're working at everything we can do to find dollars to keep it open, and then working with the politicians to help come with solutions.
Is there any option to give us 4 to 6 months to come up with a committee, work with all these people, and give the people who are being affected an opportunity to prepare? I mean, if I only had less than a month, I would be going a little bit nuts.
Right.
So,
I'm sorry, really good question, and that's one of the things we're doing. And I had a meeting yesterday with a couple staffers trying to find money and move it around, wiggle it around, so that we can offset the cost of closing the jail, at least put it off till June. That's my first goal, and that's what I'm trying to do. Whether I'm successful or not, I can't comment. I don't know.
okay, so how can we get in touch with you or get
I have an
updates?
office here that's manned every
Well,
week.
how can we get updates from you so we know what's going on, what we can do to help, because like, let's just take Ridge Project, total volunteer. But there's a lot of people who contribute to that and nobody really knows, but they know the city looks great.
Right.
So, something like that. We got to get the word out and we got to keep communicating, because once the communication is gone, this issue will be hot for a little while and then it'll go away and we'll say, remember when.
I don't think this issue is going to go away with the people today. But
So-
I think my hat's off to Mayor Breeden for initiating this town hall meeting. It's the first one we've had since I have been supervisor to direct conversation and focus towards a specific issue. Donnie Youngblood's traveled up from Bakersfield to help us, guide us through this conversation. And now we need to take the next step, which is to, in my job, the way I see it, is to see if I can find some way to keep that jail open, limp it down the road for a little bit longer if I can. And your job is going to be to find solutions to help all of us together to come to solutions to keep that jail open if we can.
Okay, and
But looking at the 2.5% down the road, I think we need to take a different tack myself. I would advise a different tack. I don't know what that is exactly, but I think we need to get all of us together to have a focused conversation on not just what the problem is, what we're talking about today, but now we need to say, okay, we've had the conversation about the problem. What are the solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to come up with solutions, and I'm not expecting him to
Right.
say, oh, well, I can do this and I can cut somewhere else. I'm not expecting
Right.
that. I live here because I don't want to live in Bakersfield, no offense. But,
I don't either.
it's,
I'm with you.
it's great here, and they do a great job. Everybody who lives here cares about this community. So,
Well, we're already working on that 2.5%, trying to mitigate. By the time we get to July, maybe we can make it 1% or less than 1% in the organization by reorganizing. We're looking at every possible option, but I don't have the money now to maintain this jail for the next 4 or 5 months, which would, at $600,000 for the year, is probably another, for 4 or 5 months, is probably $250,000. And once that's spent, that's gone for next year. So the longer you wait, if the cuts are inevitable, the longer you wait, the bigger they are.
and if the cuts are inevitable, the only thing I would say is try to give the people as much notice as possible.
Yeah,
That's only fair.
yeah. We've only had 3 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
and-
understand, but maybe they can come up with a different
Thank you.
approach from the top down. So whenever you get that paper ready to sign up, I'll put my name on it.
The paper's up. The paper's
We'll
here.
have it right here.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sophia Merrick. I really can't speak tonight. I've got a really bad sore throat, but I got a letter for all of you.
See, if everybody could have just had a sore throat, this would have been a lot easier for me. Thank you.
Okay, we got one of these.
Any other comments? Okay.
Hi again. I want to apologize to all of you. I'm not upset at you personally. It's just the situation.
I don't think you offended us.
Okay. But I do have a question to ask. You keep talking about the barrel, the oil. Anyway, I don't understand all that stuff. But does it affect every county? Am I understanding this? What I'm trying to understand
Really good
is-
question. Can I
Yeah.
review again from an overall?
Yeah.
Kern County produces about 10% of the oil that we use in the United States every year.
Okay.
Kern County pays, oil companies in Kern County pay taxes to the tune of about $27 million. I don't know exactly how much. So Kern County produces tons of oil. The price of a barrel of oil 2 years ago was $100.
I heard all that.
Okay,
I got
so
that.
the assessor builds a budget and bills the petroleum companies, the Exxons, the Aras, the Chevrons, to pay taxes based on the value of a barrel of oil. So they'll pay a dollar for that barrel of oil.
Okay.
As the value goes down of that barrel to $55, which it did last year, then the tax that those companies pay is 50 cents.
Right.
As the value goes down this year, now what they used to pay $1, now they're going to be paying about 20 cents.
But I'm having a hard time understanding why is it not affecting, no offense, Bakersfield,
It does.
but it's affecting us so badly.
Oh no, this affects the entire county.
But they're able to buy and get all this money, grants, or whatever it is. I mean, they're able to stay afloat, and we're sinking. So I'm not understanding.
The city of Bakersfield?
Yeah, apparently.
Okay, the city of Bakersfield, the oil companies don't pay taxes to the city, property taxes to the city of Bakersfield. They pay their property taxes to Kern County.
Okay, but what I'm still trying to understand is are we getting any, do we get any of?
So, really good question. So those tax revenues come in, and remember, what was $1 in tax revenue 2 years ago is now 20 cents. That 20 cents comes into our budget, and we divide that 20 cents up into all the departments, and we say, this is how much you're getting this year,
Okay.
which is significantly less than they got last year.
Well, and you also keep saying that you're worried about what's coming. You're worried about what's coming.
Well, really good question. That's another good question, because this year, our assessor assessed the value of a barrel of oil at $35. So 2 years ago it was $100. Last year was $55. This year it's $35.
Is that almost saying we're not going to be a town anymore?
No. But I'll say this. Right now, the value of that oil is $30. So I don't know where the value of the, as Iraq keeps dumping oil in the market and flooding the market, which is a geopolitical issue. We're at the end of a whip, suffering at what the OPEC countries decide to do with their oil. So right now, our oil revenues, our tax revenues are way down here, 20 cents on that, what was $1.
Okay.
We have to build a budget. We have to function. That doesn't mean we're going to go away. That means we have hard times. And that means it's going to be difficult.
I'm assuming that because you're saying a lot of things are going to be happening with the fire department or the whatever, and the police department, the sheriff's department.
Across the board.
It's like, wow.
Across the board.
And I understand Bakersfield is I've come from Rust City, so I know. But, okay, I just was wondering, are we eventually looking at, wow, what's going to happen here?
Well, we don't know. There's reason for optimism that the price of a barrel of oil
if it
will
goes
go
up,
as it goes up, we make adjustments. We'll have the same budget, but we will make adjustments at another mid-year review next year.
Okay.
And so our budget will fluctuate with the price of a barrel of oil. But that's how critical Kern County's budget is and how it relates to the cost of a barrel of oil. Right. Is the primary driver, the primary economic driver for Kern County is oil, by far and away.
Right.
Ag is a distant second.
Well, I hope it all works out, but for all of us, for the community.
It's going to work out.
Peggy, I'm a busy person too, but I'm more than willing to help in any way I
Kathy,
can.
I know how to find you.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Anthony Damiano. Supervisor Gleason.
Yeah.
Touch a little more on agriculture, because you've been putting all the onus on oil,
right?
And we have a great agricultural.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
Okay.
It's a distant second in terms of economic drivers for Kern County. The numbers, I don't know what the total value of oil produced in Kern County. John, do you know what that is? But off the top of my head, I think it's by a factor of 5. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's by a factor of 5 greater. I know the agriculture last year had $5 billion in sales.
Okay, as the price of oil goes down, the price of moving agriculture causes more profits, and all the other businesses within Kern County. So then that creates a different tax base that you're gaining from. I know it doesn't offset completely the oil issue, but it does provide. It looks like we have a comment.
John, please.
Thank you very much. It's a great question, how counties how Kern County is. I know there was a question about what about other counties. Kern County is the third largest oil-producing county in the nation, clearly the largest in the state of California. So other counties are insulated from the types of reductions we're having. In fact, many other counties are seeing better years than we are because their property taxes are based on residential and commercial, which continues to grow. In Kern County, the price of oil has so depressed our economy that it is but for the increases in residential and commercial that we're only seeing a $55 million reduction. Had all the property tax reduced at the same rate, we'd be in a $75 to $100 million reduction. So we are benefiting from ag, we're benefiting from commercial, we're benefiting from residential, but net, we're still down $55 million.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Is that it? Any other public comment? Okay. The best for last, Scott?
Not at all, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Sheriff Youngblood, I was wondering if the people here...
Would you introduce...
Scott Garber, and I'm a former chairman of the Measure L Citizens Oversight Committee.
Thank you, Scott.
Sheriff, I was wondering if the people here realize the functional effect of what's going to happen in, I guess, a couple weeks.
Well, in July. Well, okay. Were you talking about the...
Here.
Yes.
In 10 days or so?
Yeah.
Okay. You have your deputies, and it'll be the same requirement, I suppose, of the Ridgecrest Police Department and the CHP, is, say, the shift after the jail closes, who's making the decision whether to arrest somebody they know has a felony warrant because they can't cite them out, or expend the gas to drive over the hill? If your deputy has that choice, what directive are they going to be getting? Do they allow the felony, the known felon to...
Every police officer has discretion, but not with a warrant.
Right.
If they have someone that has a felony warrant, they're obligated to make the arrest.
Okay, so with that, your deputies aren't going to have that option to look the other way or expend the gas over the hill and leave as everybody...
I hope we never start looking the other way.
Okay, well, I don't know if they're going to have that choice at some point. There's the practical effect of having to leave their assignment or their post or their beat and drive over the hill, leaving their brothers and sisters in blue and khaki and green without their assistance. So if they have somebody who then maybe there's not a felony, but there's some person that would have been booked in the jail but for there being no jail, and now the choice can be made of being transported over the hill or cited back into the community after they've been arrested. What circumstances would you see that option might be left to the deputy or the officer on the street that doesn't have a jail to book somebody in?
It's always left to the officer if they have discretion.
Well, would their choice be informed differently if there's no jail locally to book them in?
No.
So their decision to book somebody or to release them wouldn't be informed by whether or not it's going to involve another 6-hour round trip?
No. No. Deputies, police officers have discretion to make an arrest, not make an arrest, based on whatever circumstances that they're in.
But they're more likely to make the arrest if it's a 6-minute drive to a jail that's around the corner versus a 6-hour round trip to Bakersfield if given that discretion.
Not a good officer. Let's be honest. If you have a probable cause to make an arrest, you're there for public safety. Your discomfort shouldn't be in play for making an arrest or not making an arrest.
How is the sheriff's office planning for the increased fuel costs and wear and tear on the vehicles to make more trips over the hill? Because if somebody, as you're saying, Sheriff, that somebody who would otherwise deserves to be whatever, however you want to put it, somebody who's otherwise going to be arrested, whether there's a jail 6 minutes away or it's a 6-hour round trip, that person, that deputy or officer will still make the same decision as you suggest. How then have you planned for budgeting increased fuel costs and wear and tear on vehicles?
Well, we drive 10 million miles a year, so we have a lot of latitude in our fuel and how much we spend. That trips from Ridgecrest to Bakersfield is not going to impact 10 million miles a year to any significance. The deputies are allowed to drive a car to their work assignment. That's called the personal patrol vehicle because the public loves that because there's more cars on the streets in the community. But even that program is in jeopardy because everybody has their own car. We furnish them a car to drive to work to Ridgecrest, and Ridgecrest was the reason that PPV exists today because our youngest officers were getting hired and nobody wanted to come to the desert. And the ones that did were the youngest ones, making the least amount of money driving their own cars, and they couldn't afford it. So we implemented the PPV program to help Eastern Kern deputies get to work.
And lastly, Sheriff, thank you. Do you have any any ideas you're willing to make public that will be on the block for the next 2.5%?
No, I don't have any idea. We're working to work that 2.5% down to as close to zero as we can. So for me to make those projections now would be a mistake, because it may not be true.
And you said earlier you said you wanted to make sure you kept a jail in East Kern, even at 2.5% or even 3% if it got worse. If Chairman Gleason.
No, there's a point in time down the road that if that jail could close, but not at 2.5%.
Okay, so you're confident that at least you're going to maintain even at 2.5%.
I am.
That Mojave will at least stay open.
I can assure you that Mojave Jail is not going to close.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Chairman Gleason and Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Okay, we have a huge job before us. I appreciate you all coming out. Sheriff, let me share with you one thing. One of the headlines in the newspapers that said today, the jail to close, it's done. I'm paraphrasing it, I hope, Jessica, but I had so many people say, what's the sense of coming out tonight? If that hadn't been in the newspaper today, this morning, I suspect you'd have seen double the number of people here, and we'd still be here another 5 hours.
Well, I can tell you the sense of coming out tonight. From what we've heard, these people influence decisions we make. Whether we like them or not, or whether we like that or not, we do, because we feel, I feel, and I know Mick does, a responsibility to the public, because that's what we do. So, the jail's scheduled to close, but it ain't over till it's over. And from where I'm coming from, and I think where he's coming from. And I will go back next week, and I'll get with Mick, and I'll get with the CAO, and we'll look at it again. See, is there any way we can get enough to at least keep it open until July? I can't guarantee that. I can't promise you that. But I can tell you that I'll do everything I can. But okay. I have to have the money to pay the detention deputy salaries to work in that jail. $600,000 a year. That's. How much are we looking at for until July? My best estimate is $250,000, because it's what's left between now and July. What percentage of the year is that of $600,000? I'm guessing around $250,000, maybe $225,000. Why not a salary cut across the board? Whoa! I don't give salaries raises, and I don't take them away. It's not my job.
Okay, I appreciate everybody who's come. Please come up here and sign up. We need your help. We need your advice. One more comment. Sorry.
Sheriff, just one question for you. What's your mission statement?
I don't have it with me.
That.
If you came here to try and embarrass me,
no,
you're not going to.
I'm not, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we thank you all for coming. All right. Same time, same bat channel when we talk for opportunities.